Good morning. Pleased to be joined with Vice Chair Ted Lieu this morning. And I wanted to say that House Democrats are committed to defending democracy abroad and standing shoulder to shoulder with our allies. That America's leadership on the world stage is being threatened. I said this during my speeches that some of the greatest threats we face are through extremism and partisanship. And we're seeing that play out with our new speaker today. This time, they're seeking to condition life-saving aid to Israel for the sole purpose of making it easier for billionaires to cheat on their taxes. According to the Congressional Budget Office, their bill is not an offset, and the corresponding cuts in revenues would actually increase our deficit by $12.5 billion. Let's keep this in mind as the deadline for government funding approaches and House Republicans pretend to care about spending. They are leaving the Ukrainian people high and dry in their war to stop Vladimir Putin and preventing the United States from bolstering our ally in Taiwan against Beijing's aggression. After 22 days of extreme MAGA Republicans holding this institution hostage, House Democrats are ready to get to work to deliver for the most pressing issues of the American people, lowering costs, funding our government, and making sure that we are sending aid to our allies without conditions, not playing political games like the speaker is doing. We're learning a lot about this new speaker this week with these first legislative decisions, and this has been a complete and total disaster. We look forward to working in a bipartisan way to send aid to our allies abroad, but this bill today is not that vehicle. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. When Democrats were in control, we put people over in politics and passed a number of laws to move the American family forward, such as the bipartisan infrastructure law. What do we get with Republicans in control? They brought our nation to the brink of a nationwide default on our debts. They brought our nation to the brink of a government shutdown. And at the middle of this month, once again, we're facing yet another government shutdown. So we asked the Republicans to adhere to the deal that then Speaker McCarthy and President Biden negotiated that was literally signed into law, and to pass appropriations bills in line with those agreements. And if they don't do that, we're going to be facing yet another government shutdown. And this is tragic for the American people. It'll hurt our economy and make sure that we are no longer the leader in the free world. Second, thing I want to mention is that on Monday, the Biden-Harris administration issued a sweeping executive order on artificial intelligence. I commend the administration for issuing this order. It has a number of elements that I and many other members of Congress asked for. This summer, Congress members Zoe Lofgren, Haley Stevens, and I wrote a letter to the administration asking them to incorporate National Institute of Standards and Technology's AI risk management framework into their federal government. This executive order essentially does that and asks NIST to adapt and put out their standards and make sure that other agencies have standards for how they regulate AI, how they have federal vendors deal with AI, and how we can make AI safer while harnessing all the benefits of AI. And with that, I will turn it back to Chairman Aguilar.
Questions? Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want you to elaborate a little bit more on Democrats' posture on this Israel standalone bill. Why are you recommending a no vote? And are you concerned that you may be putting some of your members in a difficult spot?
No, we're recommending a no vote because this is bad for national security. It's a bad precedent to set. It costs resources, but we have never conditioned emergency aid like we have done under Speaker Johnson this week. This is wrong. This is wrong for Israelis. This is wrong for the region. Just a few years ago, we added additional resources for Iron Dome in a supplemental. We didn't condition that. We didn't offset that. This is Republicans playing politics with aid to Israel. We take a lot of meetings in these chambers, and some of the meetings people have talked with us about adding conditions to aid with Israel, and we've always resisted that. And here we see Republicans doing just that. the speaker could have started out his tenure in a very different way. We could have sent, 400, we could have put 400, people on support of a bill to send aid to Israel. He chose not to do that and to politicize those efforts. It's wrong. It's dangerous. The Democratic caucus will not support that. And members will vote how they need to, but we are strongly in opposition of this because we feel that a bipartisan solution will come. A bipartisan emergency supplemental will come at some point from the Senate that looks out for our allies and friends, but does so in a responsible way that doesn't set a terrible precedent for national security.
That bill that you just, Mr. Chairman, brought up from the Senate will include border security policies that are being crafted by Republicans. Speaker Johnson said that it is his intention to pair Ukraine aid with border security. Are you concerned about that?
I think you're giving some talking points that that aren't legislation. Those are some things that senators have said. I'm not aware of any proposal. If you want to produce one that does have border security measures from Senate Republicans, I'm not aware that they've gravitated on any policy. In fact, just a couple weeks ago when they talked about this, they couldn't agree themselves on what a border solution will be. President Biden has this right. He has sent forward an emergency supplemental that has additional resources to protect our national security for Israel, for Ukraine, for our southern border, that's done in a responsible and reasonable way. That's the policy we should have. We shouldn't be adding policy measures to change, immigration. We can add additional resources. Senate Democrats, House Democrats have been supportive of that, but changing policy is something that shouldn't be done within this measure. Max?
A member of your own caucus, Dean Phillips, recently launched his presidential run against President Biden. Have you spoken to him since this launch, and what are your thoughts on his campaign?
I haven't spoken to him since his launch. The last conversation I had with him was when he told me he wasn't going to be a member of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. I haven't had any discussions, and I don't know why someone would not do their job here to campaign in a state that doesn't have any delegates, but that's I'm not a presidential strategist.
Thank you. Why did the censure resolution against Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene not get a vote last night?
You could talk to the author of the motion, Becca Ballant, but I believe our intention was to make sure that everybody in the chamber knows exactly what was happening with the politics on the other side. The fact that that they would offer resolutions and censures of our members, something that we didn't feel was right or accurate, and I appreciate that there were members on the other side who voted to table those measures. We don't always agree with each other in these chambers under this dome. But the actions that we take are meaningful, and so I think that was done in a spirit to kind of move on. We'll see what the future holds as these measures and as this extreme Republican majority continues, and we'll just hold out hope that we can work together and find some common ground.
Sure. There are preciously few days before a government shutdown, and we asked the Republican caucus to put bills on the floor that are going to help the American family and move us forward. And so the less amount of partisan games that they play, the better it will be for our country.
Go ahead, Chad.
Thank you. You talked about the importance of standing together to help Israel here, but there are some members of your caucus who have felt differently about Israel, have been critical of Israel. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spoke in very stark terms about AIPAC yesterday. Can you kind of characterize this schism among some Democrats when it comes to this Israeli policy right now, and what that means for the party where you have this breakdown?
I think members are going to have different perspectives on this, and I think that's fair, and I think that's part of legislating. We come from different regions. We're influenced by different constituents. There are members on the other side of the aisle who have said no, never for Ukraine assistance too. So I hope, Chad, you ask them those questions too, that the wide schism among House Republicans on aid to Ukraine, and why they are intent on allowing Vladimir Putin to continue his aggression and to win each and every time. So we're going to have some policy differences along the way. Our leader has said, Leader Jeffries has said, unity does not mean unanimity. We will have discussions, family discussions in the Democratic caucus, and sometimes that might mean that we vote different ways on issues. The Democratic caucus, though, is united behind values that help our allies and friends and look out for humanitarian purposes.
Are these policy differences, or some of it cross into anti-Semitism?
What I will say is it is important that people respect each other's viewpoints. That doesn't mean that you agree with each other's viewpoints. I don't agree with everything that members have said under these domes, and but I will say that it's important that we carry on, our work, that we look to help our allies in this respect, Israel and Ukraine, and making sure that we have robust funding on the humanitarian side too. Some of our policy differences have to do with timing and making sure. The fact that Republicans advanced this bill without humanitarian funding is deeply problematic to many of us within the Democratic caucus, and is something that we need to fix within the legislation. Okay, you okay? Nick, and then Lisa.
Speaker Johnson was talking this morning about the idea of a laddered CR. Is this something that you can see your party supporting to keep the government open?
As the vice chair said, it is mind-boggling to me that we're voting on, George Santos and other censure and other things when we're running out of government funding in 2 weeks. I don't understand what a laddered CR is. Some agencies are in better standing, apparently, according to the House Republican Conference. What we know is what they have done. What they have done was advance a CR that cut 30% just a few weeks ago. And I know we all forget because, we were, without a speaker for 22 days. But before that fiasco, before that Republican-led dysfunction and chaos, they advanced a CR that cut agency funding, cut our national security, cut aid to Israel by $1 billion. Those are the things that they did. So I don't know what a laddered CR does. They are already advancing appropriations measures that cut EPA and other agencies back to levels from 20 years ago. So I'm not sure what they have planned. I don't think that that's a plan that's very baked from the perspective of the Appropriations Committee. I don't think that it is grounded in much reality. But these are the things that Speaker Johnson has to advocate for to appease the most extreme members of his conference. They are his base. They are who gave him the gavel, and everyone else just goes along with it. And so that's the position that we're in.
The reason we're facing yet another government shutdown is because the Republican caucus closed Congress for 3 weeks. They took out their own speaker, shut down their floor of the House of Representatives, and the American people shouldn't suffer for their chaos and their dysfunction. They delayed all of this. They screwed up the timing. It is their fault. They own it. And that's why they need to put a clean CR and extend it so the government doesn't shut down.
You're talking about what people have said about Israel, but also part of the kind of roiling national debate, of course, the Palestinians, how people look at Palestinians. Congressman Brian Mast of Florida said yesterday that in his opinion, there are very few innocent Palestinian civilians. He again talked to the press about this morning. Kind of wonder what you think of those remarks and how you see sort of Palestinian populations embedded, of course, with a group that's considered terrorists, and whether you think the civilians are implicitly supporting Hamas.
I think his comments are deeply troubling, Islamophobic, and don't speak to the members of Congress that I want to associate with. I think it is terrible what Hamas, has done, but let's not conflate Hamas with the Palestinian people. Oftentimes, Hamas is using Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, as human shields. We've seen that time and time again, and that's why we continue to advocate for the importance of humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people, because they don't deserve what they are seeing. And so, to the extent that we can continue to advocate for that, but I can't tell you how much I disagree with Brian Mast and his comments yesterday. They're troubling and sick and not grounded in reality.
Now, obviously, you've been critical of Republicans for wanting to cut below the agreed upon spending numbers. Now, Senate Democrats have seemed to be on point with keeping those top line numbers, but at the same time, Democrats are considering a $106 billion emergency package. Is that breaking the agreement?
Well, you've heard actually, and I would correct you in the sense that it isn't just Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, the Biden administration, and House Democrats. All of us agree that we need to spend to the levels of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The agreement that then Speaker, former disposed Speaker McCarthy, negotiated with President Biden. That's the level of spending that we need to agree to. But beyond that, Senate Republicans advocated for additional funding on top of this. This was in June and July. Many of them have also indicated that they are supportive of Israel and Ukraine funding. So I would argue that this is not, out of the norm. And this is, we're treating this with the respect and the urgency, but also to the precedent of emergency spending, especially in times of war when our allies' freedoms are of interest and threatened. And so I think there is wide agreement in that respect. Let's spend on our ongoing level at the Fiscal Responsibility Act level, and then let's have a robust emergency supplemental that deals with the important issues of the day, namely Israel, Ukraine, humanitarian assistance, and Indo-PACOM priorities, and our southern border. Those are the priorities that should be bipartisan, and individually have been bipartisan. And what we seek to do is to get that accomplished. And right now, it's House Republicans who stand in the way. Thank you.
Thank you.